what made you start? What was the main influences on your choice to become an artist and become a comic book artist? I mean, for example, one of your I saw one of the covers you did in the last few years on the book The Tencent Blog.
Yeah.
And when I first saw it, I thought obviously they had just bars on it because your books, I thought they had a great influence from that period and that you know, the DC comics, yeah, and all that stuff. Can you tell us about this?
Sure. I guess it started out because I spent a lot of time by myself as a child. I had to entertain myself, and our family had a lot of books around the house. We went to the library quite often. So even before I could read, I was looking at books, looking at art books. My parents were interested in art as well. But I found myself drawn to comics, as you can imagine. And I looked. I didn't see EC horror comics when I was a child, but I saw Harvey Kurtzman's Mad, the black and white reprints. So those had a profound effect on me. One thing that was interesting was the fact that all of his parodies that were in Mad were parodies of cultural phenomenon in America. Either television shows, or they could be books, they could be movies.
Everything brought from pop culture.
Yeah, that were out there, and I really had no reference about that at all. So there's some very odd. There were some of the images were very strong and very strange, and for me very dark. I was looking at them in black and white.
It was a strong kind of
atmosphere
and kind of irony, strong kind of irony.
But I didn't understand what irony was, so I was looking at some very extreme kinds of images. I remember a parody of The Shadow, which was a popular pulp character, and the Shadow who can cloud men's minds, and so at some point he has this beautiful assistant that he's kicking her in the ass down the stairs, and her big ass is in the air, and she's flying down the stairs, and she reaches the bottom, and she's cut up, and she's all. It's very violent and strange. You don't understand that there's a humor or his dark humor. So I was looking at things like that, and very early on, I also entertained myself by drawing, and it was something that I got kind of affirmation from parents and from teachers. I actually had my parents saved my very first report card from school. And it was basically when you read this, the notes of the teacher. She said, Charles does very good drawings with crayons. However, he lacks in other social skills. So from very early on, it was very clear what my destiny was.
And can you tell us also about you told about your family, and can you tell us about the family and the city, the period when you grow,
right.
The school and all your influences except from comics?
Yeah. Well, when I was growing up, my father was he was an oceanographer, so he was in school, and I remember him still being in school when I was a child. So we moved around to a lot of different places in the United States, and really I had a look at very different kind of cultures and situations. So I lived in Seattle, Washington, which is at that point was it's still remote physically, but it was also had its very specific culture there in the Pacific Northwest. It's changed. So we lived in Seattle, we moved to Washington, D.C., which is the opposite coast, a very different culture. I lived in Missouri, which is almost the South. It felt very southern because it's the center of the United States. I lived in Colorado, up in the mountains of Colorado, and finally moved back to Seattle. So it was very...
So you had the whole impressions from the country in that period.
Yeah, but there's also, as I said before, there was also the situation of moving from one place to another, and having to establish yourself socially in different situations.
It was probably hard for a child.
Yeah, which is yeah, typically it's hard. And my skill was always like the kid that could draw, so that was my way of entering into whatever that new situation was. The quiet kid who could draw. I still am.